Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alex Sharadow. I'm a media solutions consultant at LinkedIn. So my job at LinkedIn is to help our recruitment agency clients to get the most from LinkedIn when it comes to their branding, their marketing, and their advertising. Now, I've got great pleasure today to be presenting alongside of Eamon Collins, who's the Group Marketing Director from Page Group. For those of you who don't know, Page Group are actually one of the top 25 most socially engaged brands on LinkedIn. I'm also joined today by Paul Farah, who's the chairman and founder of Aspire. Now, I've had the pleasure of working with Paul for many years, and it's great to work with Paul because Paul is, as an exec within his business, believes in social media and helps and empowers people within his organization to use different channels and different tools to communicate effectively. Also, a little known fact, for anyone here who works with Steve Lewis, Paul actually got Steve his first job out of university. So for those of you who work with Steve, you can thank Paul later, I'm sure. Now, before I let the chaps talk about amplifying their engagement strategy, I'm going to talk a little bit around stories and telling stories as individuals, but also telling stories as a business. And after that session, we're going to open up the floor to questions. So please do think up some questions as we go throughout. Nothing too tricky. But firstly, on with the story. Now, before we could write, we told stories. And oral tradition is kind of the origin of storytelling. And it was used initially to kind of share experiences and share values and educate future generations. Oral tradition was kind of what created what we now know as history. In illiterate communities around the world, oral tradition still exists, and elders will pass on information to the younger generations and educate them through the use of storytelling. In a research paper, psychologist Dr. Hodge said that storytelling typically takes place in a relaxed, non-threatening environment. Customarily, the setting was a quiet place where everyone could sit comfortably. So are we all sitting comfortably today? Yeah, good. We'll tell some more stories. Today, people listen to stories, or they read stories, or they watch stories pretty much everywhere they go. It's one of those things. You're in your office, you're reading stories. You're at home, you're watching movies, you're watching stories. You're doing it in your local Starbucks. You're doing it at events like today. Stories are weaved through everything we do. And everyone we meet, we tell a different story to. What we tell and how we tell these stories really defines who we are. So who would you want to sit next to at a dinner party? Or who would you want to make your best man at your wedding? Who would you call when you're bored? Probably the person who tells the best stories. Looking back at the origin of the word story tells us quite a lot. So originally, histor meant learned and wise man in Greek, which then became historia, which meant narrative. And then through Latin, it was transformed into history, which is the word we recognize today. And Middle English actually transformed that into story, which meant historical account. So the number one reason for telling stories is that stories have the ability to be remembered. So if history were taught through the form of stories, it would never be forgotten, said Rudyard Kipling. Stories really, really last. So long after this presentation is finished, hopefully you remember some stories. You won't necessarily remember all the data points. You won't remember all the slides. You won't remember all the little pieces. But you will hopefully remember some stories. In fact, people who are interviewed after presentations often say they only remember the story, but very, very rarely remember the minute detail of the data. Before we could write, we drew. And we found that drawing actually helped us to communicate in a different kind of way. And Aboriginal art is actually one of the first forms of storytelling in art. It made things more memorable, and it meant that we could kind of keep things for longer. Our minds are pretty simple, mine especially, and it basically means that we react more positively to images than we do to the written word. So a picture paints 1,000 words, and I'll give you some examples later on of how I've used images in marketing to keep people's attention and to keep a message relevant. So the way we use images or the way we tell stories allow us to get people to, drive people to actions. In her book, Resonate, LinkedIn influencer Nancy Duarte talks about this at length. So a story can resonate with someone to get them to do something. It's kind of like waves in an ocean. You can get people to go up and down, get people to go backwards and forwards. But really importantly, stories enable people to communicate our message, and we can help them to tell our own stories. Social media has made sharing of stories incredibly easy, and way easier than it's ever been before. So in the same way that we tell stories as individuals, businesses also want to share their messages, their visions, their values through stories. How a business tells its story will dictate how much you sell, how loyal your customer base is, and also, potentially, who is telling your story and to whom. So I've kind of come up with 5 stories that I think we should all be able to tell as individuals, but also potentially as businesses. And they are the who I am story, the why I'm here story, my mission, what I do, and what that means for you. Who am I? This really is an introduction to who you are and what your business does. It needs to be something that easily translates across multiple channels or multiple platforms. This is a story that has to be as at home on the homepage of your website as it is on your company page on LinkedIn, or as it is being told down the phone by one of your recruiters. The who I am story needs to be something that everyone within your business knows and understands and can share. This really has to be something that is lived and breathed by your organization. The next story is the why am I here story. What is the purpose of me as an individual here today talking to you? What is the purpose of your business in this instance? What is the purpose of the content you're creating and sharing with people? The mission. This really is what your business stands for. What's your core values? What's your vision? And what's the story behind that? If the mission is kind of your why, well, the what I do is really the how you do your job today and how you influence people and how you impact them. So what's your USP or your unique selling proposition when it comes to the work you actually do? How is that different from other people? Now, actually, one of my colleagues said something quite interesting earlier. He said that I shouldn't talk about USPs. I should talk about UBRs, the unique buying reason. So not why we sell our stuff, but why do people buy from us in the first instance? And finally, we need to close that circle. We need to close that loop. And we need to give case studies and examples or testimonials, stuff that's successful, that demonstrates what we've done in action in the earlier stages. So why do we do this? Well, we want to move people. And through a series of different kinds of stories, we can move people from a point in time when they have no idea who we are to a point in time when they're ready to do something with us. So each one of these stories moves someone along one step of a journey towards a point in time when they're ready to transact with us, either as a candidate, as a client, or potentially even to come and work with us. Now, this is very much a journey, and we need to think about how we can use these journeys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an example of how I've used this journey in my life recently. Now, I know that social recruiting is all about recruiting, but I thought I'd go a bit left field and go a bit rogue, sorry, marketing, and kind of talk about what I did recently when I ran a marathon and how I generated some money through that as well. So, the first story I told, hopefully you can all see this, this is my son, and he's trapped behind a lamppost. So I was telling a story of how I've been playing with my son in the park and how on his way home he managed to stick himself between the lampposts, and because I'm a really responsible adult, before I rescued him from this peril, I took a photo and shared it on Facebook, standard. So this story really was trying to resonate with my colleagues, my connections. A lot of people know that I'm a dad, but it doesn't hurt to remind people. And I wanted to gain some interaction with them through social media, because I know that a like or a comment today reduces the friction for future interactions or future transactions. So people are much more likely to respond to other content I push out in the future if I start to generate some form of interactions now, today. Now, that led me on to my next story, which was an email I sent out to all of my colleagues and connections. And it said, my son's favorite film is The Jungle Book. Has anyone watched The Jungle Book recently? Watch it. It's pretty cool. When The Jungle Book was initially written, there were over 10 million elephants worldwide. Today, there are less than 600,000 elephants. Now, if my son's favorite film is The Jungle Book, and those are the elephants within that film, I wanted to make sure that he grew up in a world where elephants still existed, and potentially his kids would grow up in a world where elephants still existed. So why I was there was to raise money for elephants. I then shared my Just Giving page, And on my Just Giving page, I made sure there were loads of stories there around what's happening in the world today with poachers, what's happening in Africa with, with the wildlife and the elephant sanctuaries that are there. And just kind of explain, there was a documentary from the BBC talking about poachers today. So I wanted to share those different stories with my target audience. So what was I going to do? Well, I was going to run really, really, really far, pretty fast too. So I shared a photo of me running a half marathon the year before, and I used this photo actually as a profile picture on all of my different social media channels so that it reminded people of what it was I was going to be doing in the near future and how I was potentially going to be raising money for charity. And finally, I tried to close the loop, and I shared this photo of Raja, who's a 70-year-old blind elephant in the Pinnawala Elephant Orphanage in Sri Lanka. Now, the World Wildlife Fund, who I was running for, they actually support these kind of charities and these initiatives. So what I was trying to do was explain that the work that I was going to do through running this marathon was actually going to benefit these elephants as well as my son and as well as me for making me feel like a good guy. So by telling these different stories, I was able to raise over £3,000 in charity without having to beg, without having to pester. In fact, this is pretty much all I did when it came to trying to raise money for charity. I just told a bunch of stories that took people on a journey from kind of understanding what it was I wanted to achieve to a point in time where I could demonstrate what the result might potentially be for that person if they were to help me in my charity fundraising initiatives. So what I want to do is I want to let you guys think about the different stories that you can tell as individuals, but also as businesses, that help move your different audiences of candidates, clients, potential future hires along this map. So use that as a potential framework. You don't necessarily have to use photos of your own kids in your marketing activities. Might not necessarily be the right kind of message, but think about how you can use these to move people along. And on that note, what I'd like to do is pass over now to Eamon. Give Eamon the stage.
Come on down. Thank you. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Eamon Collins. I'm the Group Marketing Director for Page Group. Alex says it's all about stories. I suppose I should tell you my story of social media. So I remember when we started the journey about 5 years ago, and I probably was the world's biggest social media cynic. Didn't really understand why people felt the need to share the fact they just had a coffee, or they just got up, or they turned the duvet over the wrong way, or whatever it may be. But slowly over time I've warmed up, and I can see now the potential of what social media has done for us as a company and what it can do in terms of building our future. So Dave earlier on talked about the funnel and about the pipeline. From the very start, we've thought of our strategy on social media as a pipeline for both candidates and clients. That pipeline can be short, and it can be about immediate sourcing tools for candidates. We're not going to touch on that today, but there are plenty of LinkedIn people probably in the room who will be keen to sell you those tools if you so wish to buy. We're going to touch more on what we do around long-term pipeline and medium-term pipeline and how we engage with our customers. So a quick snapshot of Page Group, probably better known to most people in the room as Michael Page or Page Personnel and Page Executive. We rebranded about 2 years ago to put out the Page Group branding. At the heart of our growth as a company is our organic business model. It's a point of consistency for us that allows us to kind of bring our strategy to life as being specialists, knowledgeable, and looking to build long-term relationships with our customers. And it influences everything we do in our social approach. From my point of view, I think it's been touched on a little bit already today, that our industry at its heart is about human relationships. So technology as an enabler rather than an end goal is a very important message. And so in leading social strategy at Page, what I really want to ensure, both in terms of content and tone, is that we retain our specialist reputation and what we hope is a premium brand positioning. So when asked to talk about amplifying engagement, I thought we might start with what defines engagement. Lots of lovely symbols here that describe it to lots of people. The standard accepted wisdom that we've been handed over the last few years from quite a few social media agencies is that engagement equals interaction. People talking, sharing, commenting. I think if you're Coke, if you're Nike, that all makes sense, and I would agree. But actually, I think there's a core issue there for us in our industry. And certainly for Page, we operate in an area where, as a general rule, you're unlikely to go shouting from the rooftops that you're out looking for a new job. And in that network world, there is always the risk or fear that your boss or your colleagues are going to be jumping to conclusions if they see you retweeting, liking, following lots of content put out by somebody like us. So for us, we still consider broadcast, actually, through social media channels and the subsequent action of that broadcast as important a measure as interaction. How do we do that? We do measure our program in terms of followers, absolutely. But we also measure the views of our content. And we also look at traffic generated to our website as a result of the program. And with some success, as you can see here, happily all the blinds are heading in the right direction and going in the right place. And we feel it's a program that we've learnt lessons along the way. I'm going to touch on a few of those. But broadly, we're looking at what those measures are, and we constantly measure them every day, every week, every month. Why have we embarked on this program of developing a social program to build brand presence? Well, historically, we relied on bought media, both in press and online, pages of page ads covering the back of magazines and the back of newspapers for recruitment. And what we've witnessed over the last few years is that the media landscape has fragmented, and it continues to fragment and become much more complex in order for us to reach our customers. So there's no real single source of truth anymore. So we continue to invest in bought media, and we continue to invest in our own channels. But we really do believe that social offers us a great channel for us to tell our story. Why tell our story? Dave touched on this earlier on. The reality is we pride ourselves at Page as being specialist and on being a consultancy. And we are looking to build trust and credibility with our audiences and with our customers, and through that, affinity with our brands. So, as Dave said earlier on, it's not about the immediate return. It's about investing in people for the long term, looking for when they will be ready to recruit their next team or to take their next role. And at that point, we want to be on their shopping list. So we see this pipeline as a long-term investment for us building our brand over a period of time. So where do we go to start this journey? I think it'd always be an aim in a social presentation to put in a very dodgy social diagram sourced through social media. But the point is, it's a very confusing social world. You can get very easily distracted. And you need to choose which platforms you want to operate on. There can be many reasons about choosing those platforms. So to define those platforms for us, we looked at relevance, but relevance for different reasons. We either looked at essentially sheer size, something like Facebook, so the whole, third biggest country in the world after India and China, blah, blah, etc. So our audience is definitely there. We looked at the change in media consumption habits. So as Dave touched earlier on, the fact that people do want to look at infographics, they do want to consume video and video on the move. So we looked at YouTube and what we do there. We also looked at related benefits, so slightly smaller numbers, but actually with Google+, there are related benefits around SEO and what that drives in terms of traffic to our sites. Or on Twitter, it's really more about the influence over and above its actual scale. I mean, the user numbers for Twitter, much smaller than something like Facebook or even YouTube. But actually, its influence over views, trends, opinions is much larger. And that's very interesting to us as an area because that's the kind of content we want to be pushing. But of course, much to the relief of our hosts, our most important channel, is LinkedIn. For us, users are passionate about their careers, and we can be there at the point all the way through to steer and advise, give them insight, give them thought processes that help them choose the right paths to grow their careers, as well as find some jobs with us. I put this one really in just as an aside, because actually that kind of focus on relevance does lead us to not just the big global five, actually. It does lead us to look at some of the more local or regional players. Some of these, I don't know, some of you might know them, some of you might not. But, as an aside, some of them are very hefty in size. So WeChat, which sits in the middle there, has 400 million users, mainly in China. And we have a specific strategy that looks at how we use WeChat. And I was informed by Alex recently that LinkedIn have a partnership with them, which is great. But we use WeChat extensively for our China region. We also use Xing in Germany, which I'm sure the LinkedIn people won't be too happy about, but we do. And also we use things like Mixi in Japan. So we always look at the relevance of the platform, where the people are that we want to reach, and the platforms that they're using most often for the kind of content and the kind of information we want them to consume from us. This is a little bit about, touched on earlier on as well, that not every social platform will be right for your business. You would need to find a lot of time and a lot of resource, perhaps a little bit longer than half an hour on your iPhone, to cope with all these different channels and what you can do on them. And some of the most talked about social media brands might be an immediate distraction from what you need to do. That's especially the case to marketing people like me, who get very distracted by bright, shiny new toys and thinking about what you should do on Snapchat and what should we do with Instagram and how should we use Pinterest. Actually, in reality, we focus on platforms that align with our business goals and with our brand, and we maintain a watching brief on these brands to see what else we could use them for in the future. So I suppose once you've got your stage, I'm glad that somebody mentioned a cat meme or cat gif earlier, you have to decide what you're going to deliver. What is the content? Again, it's very easy to get distracted. This runs slightly contrary maybe to some of the messages from earlier on. It's easy, I think, to fall into the trap of the latest trend. Should you be tweeting something about ALS? Should you be tipping buckets of water on your head this week, etc.? I'm surprised somebody hasn't done it today, but there we go. Honestly, we've learned that the hard way. We've tried some of this stuff. We've tried, our watchwords when we started the program 5 years ago were fun, frequent, and memorable. Those are the kind of 3 watchwords we looked at in terms of developing our campaign. In reality, that fun bit has eluded us, basically because it's not what people expect from Page. It's not their expectation of our brand. And us trying to create humorous, funny videos that thousands of people will share millions of times just didn't work. So it's kind of made us cause to think again and focus more about what we do and how we approach it. And it's now led us really to look at content that we deliver that we characterize as seriously useful. Unsurprisingly, it's all around the world of work. We kind of look at whether we should be offering market updates in different formats, be it infographics, be it videos, but updates about the market, trends about what's going on. We talk about ourselves, certainly in terms of attracting people that want to work for us and kind of attracting talent to our own company and what they should do. We also talk very, very succinctly, very factually about employer advice and career advice and what they should do, again, in different formats across different platforms. And finally, we also look at very, very down-to-earth things that people really want to know when they're looking for jobs is how much can I earn or how much am I going to have to pay somebody? So we kind of try and gather as much data as we can and also push that traffic to our website about salaries and what people are doing. It relates back, all of this content relates back to what I said before about driving trust and credibility, establishing us as a source that people will then think when I want to take the next role in my career, I trust Page, they say sensible things in my area. Equally important in the program is that we think of an activity of what we do and how we say it. So if you think of it as a conversation, sometimes one-sided, we need to do it in the right tone of voice. So the expectation on social is certainly that you are less corporate, sometimes a struggle for Page, I have to admit, and more human. And it's a challenge sometimes to get that balance right. But what we do endeavor to do is we segment our content. We look to ensure that it's meaningful for those that are reading it. Whether that be for our kind of top-level brands like Michael Page, or actually it's appropriate for the audiences at a lower level who are looking just for aspirational content and to engage with something a little bit more interesting and fun like Page Personnel. Finally, in terms of what we do, when it comes to deploying and amplifying all of this, we work really hard to make sure that what we do is not just a marketing exercise. It takes marketing to provide structure. It takes marketing and experts like community managers, which we have, to drive and structure that approach. But actually, we believe that our clients, our candidates, want to hear from the horse's mouth. They want to hear from people who have the knowledge of the industry, who have the knowledge of the market that they're recruiting into. So our consultants are on the phone every day giving that expert advice, and they are very easy talking to people about it. What we look to do is translate that into our social program and empower our people to use social media, to spread our messaging, to look at our content. We have advocates from the very top with Steve, our CEO, a frequent user of Twitter, who actually writes his own, much to the disbelief of most people, but he actually does. And throughout the rest of the organisation. We also, as Dave referred to, we also use the size of our network. You know, we're very lucky that on LinkedIn alone, our consultants, we have a network reach of 2.3 million people as first connections. So if we can engage, motivate our own teams to spread and disseminate all of our content, it's going to be great for us. So in summary, when I was asked today to talk about amplifying engagement and strategy on social media, we think it's important to consider all of these different factors in determining your direction and what you do. I think in this area, as I've touched on, there is a danger of building glittering palaces. To use a dodgy film reference, the field of dreams, you know, you can take the idea of build it and they will come, but our experience is that's not the case. You have to dissect your content and decide where you're going to put it and how you're going to reach out to people with it. You need to ensure that what you say, where you say it, and how you say it stays true to your brand and actually always has a core business purpose behind it. Thank you. Yes.
Right, well, thank you very much for inviting me. I was very surprised to be invited because I'm not an expert. Usually I like to talk at things where I think I know what I'm talking about, and this I don't know much about. Now, when I say I don't know much about, Alex actually said he wanted me to share some of the experiences we have because we do lots of stuff. And I'm sure we do lots of stuff, but I've sat in lots of digital media and marketing conferences, listened to lots of people contradict each other who pronounce themselves as experts, so I'm not an expert, so please take that as step one. But I do hope I'll share, you can get some value out of something I'm going to say, because we've been on a journey, and Alex really wants me to talk about the journey we've been on, and so what lessons we've learnt, and in particular this measurement of ROI. Google Dave had his measurement ROI, which I thought was a bit flimsy personally. As a business owner, I actually want to know pound spent, pound return. Lots of little metrics about, well, if you get so many people, and if you happen to convert it, would end up like that with an average fee. Doesn't really do it for me. So that's the start off, so please leave if that's going to bore you. Otherwise stay, because that would be cool, because there's going to be Q&A and afterwards. So I'm going to talk about how we use the rebrand to create a cohesive marketing strategy, where we've got to, the social channels we use, engagement strategy, and in particular the challenges and ROI, and if we've got time, a couple of stories of where we really screwed up. So, first of all, we used to have this. So, for those who don't know the business, we specialise in media and marketing, communications, industry and recruitment. And our journey was, we started 22 years ago as Fee Farrow Jones, rebranded as PFJ. We launched a company called the Graduate Recruitment Company. We then bought a company called RP Cushing, then one called Periscope. We launched in Singapore and Hong Kong with the Aspire Global Network Asia. We had all these brands, and we needed an elevator about 20 levels high to even begin to explain what we were doing. It confused us, it confused our clients, and it confused all the communications really across the whole business. So we decided we needed to do something different, and that was to rebrand. Now, for all of you who might be business owners, thinking about actually changing the name of your company is quite a big one, particularly when you've acquired companies, particularly when in those companies there are people who were the leaders in those companies who therefore feel they own it. But I'm really was really encouraged that within our business people really got on board with this. So what we set out to achieve was we wanted to say, right, well, we work in the digital media space, the marketing communications industry, so we had to have a website, and I think Google Dave talked about one of our competitors called Digital Gurus. I agree with them, they've got a great website. So we needed to have something that was going to be really, really powerful and was relevant to the marketplaces that we actually work in. We also realised that we needed to within all this, have a personalised experience, because we were going from doing our different brands with their different expertises, so RP Cushing being market research, Periscope being creative and design. If you were one of those people coming to a website and actually, hold on a second, what does this do? This doesn't work for me, I just want creative and design, we would need to have some sort of personalisation to go with that. We also wanted to therefore bring everything under a new brand that meant something to everybody, and also that worked across different geographies, because for those of you who are outside of the UK or work in different continents, you know, there are major cultural differences, and so we needed something that's going to work across all that. And at the end of the day, we also wanted a mark that was one recognisable brand and something we could have some fun with. For all those of you sitting there thinking, well, you've got a website, everything's happy and hunky-dory, if you haven't already done so, you will know you will be changing it in the next 2 or 3 years, because these things go out of date so quickly, everything's changing so quickly. So hopefully this will make some sense for you. And our budget was 200,000, just so you know. So we engaged a branding consultant, because although we operate in the space, we thought we might know something, 1 or 2 things about branding. It transpired very quickly, and we spoke to an expert, we knew absolutely nothing. And they ripped it apart. They ripped our existing brands to shreds. There was no connection between them. We lost all the goodwill. Our candidates were confused about the different changes, the different brands. Our clients were confused about different brands, and our consultants were confused about the different brands. So we went out to pitch, and we went out for a design pitch and a web build pitch, so 2 different pitches. As it happens, we appointed format. Interestingly, from a branding perspective for them, we had no idea they did creative design, but they did. They researched our candidate market, they researched our competitors, they researched our own people, surveyed everybody. We did a number of sessions internally to find out what people wanted, because we wanted everyone in the business really on board with this, but obviously for us, our key core community is going to be our candidate community. Not too bothered by clients, to be honest. But in my view, and I'll back up what Eamon said, we're not Coca-Cola, we're not Nike. People are coming to us, hopefully looking for a job in the marketplaces that we operate in, and feel they've come to the right place. That was the gig that we wanted to give them. So we launched our new website in May. Now, if I start talking about quarters, by the way, our quarters start 1st of May. So that's when our financial year starts. So we launched it on May the 12th, and then once the glitches were found, because of all the testing you do and all the rest of it, you soon find that things aren't quite working. But actually a lot of testing had happened, and it was very good. All the staff were involved, all our guys, clicking on everything, every page, every link, everything you could possibly do, try and make it break. And once we recognised all those were ironed out, we then launched the Singapore site, and the Hong Kong site, but now all under one brand. We also then launched the mobile site. I don't know how many people have got mobile sites. Put your hands up if you've got mobile sites. Yeah, because this is clearly where a lot of the traffic's now moving to. And we also launched a career site, so a separate site within it for career site. And our thinking was, you know, why is anyone visiting our site? We look at all this really cool stuff. You go and listen to all these guys talking about Kmart and close shaving and all these amazing viral videos you can watch that are really fun and funky and all the rest of it. Say, oh, we could do that. But do we really want to drive millions of people to our site of complete lack of relevance to what we do? So for us, it's the site had to be relevant. It had to have very strong job content as its starting point. Because our belief is that that's what someone's coming to look for. They're coming to look for a job. So it had to have strong job content. So we did a lot of work with our employees about writing ads, and someone's already talked today about optimization, or how to optimize your ads and that type of stuff. Because we wanted people to come and say, yes, this is where I should be. I'm in the right place. And then at the bottom of the page, it says cookies on our website, but actually underneath that there's a whole social media bit that then drops down, a social wall. And so this is the engagement piece where hopefully then people come and say, okay, this is relevant, and oh look, there's some interesting content in here, and there's a reason to return. So a large amount of relevant jobs and a large amount of engaging content for us was what we wanted, because that we felt then people coming to us to say, I'm in the right place, this is the right thing to do. And this is all in real time. Obviously this isn't real time, it's a PowerPoint thing, but the jobs change. Whenever you go on the site, it's changing all the time. For us, it was also trying to make sure that we were beginning to dominate the sort of media and marketing communications sector from the volume of real, genuine jobs in all the different specialist areas that we have. So, the next thing I'll talk about is the personalisation. Now, this is absolutely key for us. So the first thing that happens, we drop cookies, as everyone else does, I assume, on people. So we wanted to bring people back to the relevant pages that they'd been on, because if you are a sales director in an exhibition company and you've been looking for a job, when you come back, you're not interested in a copywriting job. So we wanted people to come back to the relevant area. So after this page, then prompts. So just a couple of questions people can ask to personalise the site to themselves. And there's a drop-down box they can choose from to say, actually, this is what I'm interested in. And we only launched this in May, but we've already got 10,000 people, over 10,000 people who've already filled this in. So they then are personalising the site. And you can see this actually when you come back, it'll say, hey, Jenny, see the latest, greatest in the world of digital and performance jobs, because that's what she's been ticking. And then all the social content, the blogs, the videos, the tweets and everything are also relevant to that sector. So Jenny therefore feels I'm in the right space. This is right for me. So that's very important to us, and we feel is relatively unique. As far as social channels are concerned, I've got grey hair, I'm middle-aged and overweight, and recruitment in the old days was lovely, wasn't it? You just stuck an ad in, or you headhunted people. Now we've got all this social stuff everywhere. And it is amazing. But we are, while I might sound like a Luddite, I'm actually the opposite. We're early adopters. We will try absolutely everything. In fact, we're social sluts. So we'll try absolutely everything. But you've got to rationalise which channels work best for you. So, for example, for us, Facebook advertising, pants, in the UK. In fact, Facebook full stop in the UK, pants. Okay? In Asia, Facebook, unbelievable. They love it out there. They have personal profiles. They'll actually have professional profiles on Facebook in Asia. So it's a completely different gig. And the connection, engagement in Asia, Hong Kong and Singapore is absolutely amazing as far as Facebook is concerned. So you've got to try things, see what works, look at your location, look at cultures, and change it. You've got to look at the specialist teams you have, so what disciplines do you have that are relevant for each market, and say what works for them. So, and then tailor also the look and feel of each of these social channels that you're using. There's a lot of work involved. Twitter, we find actually is used by all teams very successfully. Instagram works well in Asia, and LinkedIn, I'm pleased to know they do very well too. So the next thing is about creating content. Now these are columns. Please don't look in rows. The colour thing makes it look in rows, but it's columns. So our strategy is really about, right, we've got to create content, you've got to engage people, and then we've got to measure it. Okay, so creating content for us, as I said earlier, the most important piece is about quality job ads. And then everything else is this funnel that we talked about, is engaging our core audiences, our passive audience, down the funnel to try and get them to see, right, these people have got quality jobs that are relevant to me, and so we can work with them. The engagement aim is to create high touch via multiple channels. We meet all our clients, we meet all our candidates, I'm sure you do too. And so we want to also create this environment which is high touch. And then measurement. The most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is what revenue, what pound am I getting back from the pounds we are spending. And the only way at the moment we're able to measure that is people who register on the site and follow them through to see where they're placed. I think that's what hopefully everyone else does as well. Okay, and we can talk about that in a second. So, challenges we had. 22 years of heritage bin, 22 years of goodwill thrown away. So that was a challenge. Challenge number 2, SEO. Of course, we got rid of all the old sites and suddenly started from a blank sheet. So we also have a Google Dave who works with us, a different Google Dave to Liverpool Google Dave, who did a lot of work, but nevertheless we were starting with a zero start. Ability to create content. We're a recruitment business, but actually I think anyone in our space now, we're not recruitment businesses as they were known. We're now having to consider ourselves to be marketing businesses or recruitment marketing businesses as much as anything else. So the ability to create content. And our social policy is all around empowerment. empowerment of our people to create content. Yeah, so it's quite risky. You might have come across the cheeky finger. If not, hands up. Anyone saw the cheeky finger at all? Just 1, 2. Yeah. This was an ad written by someone on behalf of someone else who's going on holiday who didn't check it before it went, and it just happened to have the line about a cheeky finger up the arse. And an ad. Yeah, that's professional, isn't it? That's very good. Some of our competitors screen grabbed it before we saw it and took it down, and this started sort of going out. So you do have some challenges in empowering your people, and that was just an innocent mistake. And we wrote a blog about it and that sort of stuff. And actually, we got a lot of engagement back because we were showing the perils of social media. Another one was something was trending on Twitter, which was, do you think you're having a bad day? I think it was called. I don't know if anyone saw that. And this was someone who was really sounding off about their company and their manager in particular. And one of our people retweeted it. Seems harmless enough, apart from the fact that the company involved were following us on our Twitter feed, and that's the first they heard about it and instantly identified it as themselves. So they weren't very happy. So there are dangers in that. I would have thought that's fairly innocent, but some people get very hot under the collar about these things. The other thing is the volume of channels there are and the amount of time we've got, and investment. You know, it's all very well doing all this stuff, but you have to have marketing teams or marketing people and people doing it. So it's not just the cash you're spending, it's also the people you've got. And the lack of analytics. I'd say, you know, everyone talks about analytics. I'd say there aren't enough of them. So I'm about to go over time. So let's tell you about some successes, shall we? We started on May the 1st, rebrand May the 12th. Oh, no, I've gone too fast. Q1 traffic to the website via social media channels was up 41%. LinkedIn followers up 49%. Applications to the website up 52%. Length of visit 31%. 64% of our candidates now come via our own sources. Twitter has driven visits has gone up 80%. And the ROI, 2011 to 2012, 18% of our revenue came from the website. The following year, 22%. Last year, 25%. Now, with a 52% increase in applications, hopefully, if I can next year tweet to you that we would have seen an increased ROI from that. The future, we're aiming to eradicate use of job boards and use sponsored LinkedIn updates, sponsored tweets, Facebook in Asia, something called retargeting, if you're familiar with that, which is about greater personalisation and greater engagement with our existing community that we built up over many years and, quite frankly, we're really rubbish at communicating with. That's me.
Thank you both very much for your comments and your presentations. We'd now like to open up to the floor for questions. I think I might sort of kick off by asking one or two questions, actually. Eamon, in your view, how difficult is it to manage marketing across so many different regions with so many different kinds of teams? How do you kind of communicate with your other marketeers to empower them to be successful in what they do?
It takes quite a determined effort, I have to say. Looking forward, we're going to use a social media channel to do it. We're going to install a product called Yammer, which allows our teams to collaborate across borders in real time. But in effort, you just have to put the time and effort in and establish structures and time for people to discuss, share, look at things that work, things that don't work, as Paul said, and make sure that we don't make the same mistakes over and over again.
Cool. And Paul, obviously you use social media a lot. You must find some time in your day to use social media. Have you changed the way you communicate with your teams and your staff to, I suppose, allow them more time on these kind of different tools?
Yes. Everyone's very easily distracted, I think. I think the millennials, is that what we're called, or the generation, there's a lot of distraction, a lot of noise around all the time. Email is a terrible one. The email was a start, it pinged up in your box, and it's so exciting to get an email now. It's not so exciting, but everyone's moved to the latest thing. Twitter, have you seen this? Have you seen that? Someone shares this with you, ping, ping, your phone's buzzing, you're getting tweets out of things all over the place. And it's like, what do you do? Are you someone who's so organised that you say, right, 8 to 9 I do this, 9 to 10 I do that. And recruitment, to me, in my mind, is not like that. You get calls come in, you get things to do, and this is just something else. It's just occupying our time. I actually think social media is a huge time waster, yet we've released our people to use it as they see fit, when they see fit, how they see fit. I mean, it wasn't very long ago, was it, where people weren't allowed to use Facebook at work. I don't know your businesses, people had to use Facebook, but it wasn't actually, it was, we're talking about a couple of years ago, policies, you cannot use this and you cannot use that. And we were just like, well, use it and see what happens, because your output will dictate to us whether the effort's going in. So is that the answer to the question?
Well, yeah, so I suppose what we're saying is people can use it, but only if they're getting something from it. As
Yeah.
opposed to wasting time.
But they can't, what are they supposed to do? They're on Twitter. I mean, I don't know about you, you've got to be relentless. I mean, if you look at your Twitter feed now, there'll be, 2,000 messages sitting there. You'll probably read 5 or 10. If you're on LinkedIn, you'll see the most recent updates. If you're on Facebook, which is more personal to you, you probably look down I haven't got very many friends on Facebook either. And so it's easy for me to manage that news feed, but even that, it's like, oh God, ploughing through the whole thing. So I think it's really difficult. So you've got to be relentless when we're using it. You might write a really good blog or do a really good video, and you send it out once, and you say, oh, that's job done. You've got to just keep pummeling it out there, because you don't know when the person's looking.
True, yeah, good point.
Hi there, it's Phil from Extra Tech here. With you having a global company serving different geographical regions, different disciplines, different brands, do you look to build out one sort of unified global community on the social media platforms, or do you tend to sort of build out specialist communities for each of the brands and regions that you serve?
Well, excellent question, Eamon. What do you think?
It's the latter. We absolutely, I think it is all about finding what resonates with your audience and making sure that it is a personalised experience, as Paul's touched on. You have to think about what you do. That there is a level that you can't go too far down, but actually what is, what touches people, what interests people and motivates people in Asia, even within Asia. Japan is a very unique community versus China versus Singapore, and the same in the UK. Actually, in the UK, certainly on LinkedIn, we've pursued with our groups. We've put together quite a few LinkedIn groups, and that is based around specialism or discipline. It's not just one UK LinkedIn group. It is very much about inviting people that can share relevant content into that group and with those people in the group. There will be topics, there will be stuff that can be common and generic, but actually in broad terms we try to push, as I said, it's about us being specialists and having expertise in our field, and that means that you need to talk to accountants in a voice that accountants want to hear, and not about the latest trends in the legal market.
Yeah, our experience, I lived in Singapore for a while we set it up, and learning different cultures and stuff is fascinating. They're obsessed with taking photographs of food. All my Singaporean and friends in China or across Asia, it's just one photo on Facebook of food after another. Now, I looked at it, start with, I'm not interested. Then you start liking, then you start commenting on it. And weirdly, you suddenly get, oh, by the way, you the bloke with those jobs in such and such. And you go, what? What's this relevant to a cookie? It's a cupcake. What's this got to do with anything? And it's just how it's learning how people engage. But yes, in Hong Kong's got its own website, Singapore's got its own website, because they're slightly different cultures in the way they approach things. And but hopefully you look at it and think it's the same. It's Aspire, it's just Aspire Hong Kong. Imagery is very important, and we leave the content down to the local office.
Hello, gentlemen. I'm Aragon. I'm in RM for the Benelux. I try to advise SMB customers actually on all of this, but the thing that I hear all the time is, oh, that's for the big companies. They've got the money to spend on it, let them do it. We're just small, we just call our candidates. What would you say to these companies?
From an SME point of view, I consider ourselves to be an SME. We're 13.5 million in turnover, 8.4 in NFI, NDR, gross profit, whatever you refer to it. So we're 100 employees, right? So in recruitment terms, apparently some people call us big. I wouldn't call that big compared to them. Little and large, so it's the wrong way around, isn't it? But from an SME point of view, the ROI for me is the thing. What are you going to spend your money on, and what are you going to spend your time on? And anyone, if you've got a website, as I said earlier, it's going to have to change in the next 2 or 3 years. This is constant evolution, and it's therefore understanding what everyone's talked about. What is the journey? What's the point? What are you trying to do? And then actually being realistic about what you can do with the resources you've got. Because if you start trying to do everything, you would go nuts. I mean, we tried that. And then you end up doing little bits, which is nothing. It's pointless. If you're going to do something, you've got to do it properly. This isn't a plug for LinkedIn. But we were early adopters to LinkedIn and found that, extremely useful. But we're also early adopters into Twitter and stuff like that. But it's also in your staff, they have to be passionate, really passionate about it. There's quite a big piece to do, why would your staff want to be passionate about your business? Do they actually love your business, or do they just get paid by your business and turn up for work? So I'm not suggesting for a second that everyone at Aspire absolutely loves Aspire and they can possibly not work anywhere else. Of course they don't. But there's a portion of them that are passionate about it. And they're also creating their own profile. So there's a lot of business owners, don't know how many recruitment business owners sitting here, are worried about LinkedIn contacts, are worried about, well, if they're allowed to build out their own profile, what happens if they walk out the door? They've gone. Let them go. Don't fret about it. It's what are you as the business gaining off the back of it? So I think for us, we freed them, and to date it's been all right. Any wood around here?
Not yet.
Probably hard for us to kind of give a steer from an SME point of view. Except I suppose we do kind of treat quite a lot of our business units almost like SMEs. So to go and empower each of those business units to look at what they do and what their content is, and it's structured in a program. So the role of marketing, the benefit we have is a central marketing department that allows us to structure a program. But actually, I think as been said before, it's all about finding advocates, and everybody in this room has advocates about their business who can talk with authority and with a bit of passion about what matters to them and what drives their market.
I will say it depends what markets you're in. I don't know what markets you work in, but we are in the digital media stuff. If our guys weren't wanting to do it, then I'd be slightly concerned.
Hello, Stephen here from Spencer Ogden. This is directed to Alex. Promised you a question earlier. When it comes down to this amplifying engagement, and it gets a very reductionist approach, very targeted, has to be driven to specific groups, specific disciplines, do you think we're in danger as an industry of then breaking the fourth wall through LinkedIn or otherwise, and thus becoming and losing a lot of our professionalism and relationship there between client candidates and things like that?
Interesting question. So I think one of the key things to remember is that every single business has a personality. And the personality of that organisation, be it a very professional personality you might potentially have, or potentially slightly more relaxed personality, will be reflected in the interactions you have with your staff, with the people you work with on a day-to-day basis. So how you translate that into an online space is important. You can't be someone, you can't pretend to be someone you're not. So I think realistically, the boundary between what is professional and what is social becomes more and more blurred, and I'd say the blur is probably there where businesses are more relaxed. Again, if you're a very, very professional organisation, you're never going to be doing anything too left field. So there'll still be those different barriers, as it were. Does that sort of answer the question?
Yeah.
Bit?
Yeah. Cheers.
Thank you guys very much for your time today. Hope you enjoyed it.